You mentioned HRF,
Mm-hmm.
Human Rights Foundation. What is it? What is its mission?
Yeah, so I've been working for HRF since 2007. We are a charity, a nonprofit, a 501c3 based in New York, and our mission is to promote and protect individual rights and freedoms in authoritarian societies around the world. So again, we define about 95 countries as authoritarian, meaning it's either a one-party state or opposition politicians are outlawed or persecuted. There's no real free speech. There's no press freedom. There's no independent judiciary. There really aren't checks and balances. And even trying to create like a human rights organization or like an environmental group would be illegal. And the majority of the world's population lives in that environment. That's very important.
You said 53%.
53%, 4.3 billion people.
And I saw you outlined a lot of different sources of suffering in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sort of put people living under authoritarian governments
Mm-hmm.
as like more than all of them. I forget all the examples you provided, but
Sure.
it's maybe you can mention if you remember.
The number of people who are refugees, the number of people who suffer from natural disasters, the number of people who live under abject poverty, the number of people who don't have access to clean drinking water, all of these are dwarfed by the number of people who live under authoritarianism. And yet, it's not something that we talk about a lot because people are mercantilist, and the powers that be are happy to sacrifice freedoms and privacy for money. We live in a profit-seeking world. To get evidence of this, take a look at the list of sponsors of the upcoming Olympics in China, where the CCP is currently committing genocide against the Uyghur population. Or look at the number of people and the famous investors who went to Saudi Arabia a couple months ago for the Davos in the desert. Ray Dalio was there. All kinds of people were there, or at least they were invited, and they said they were going to go. And this is a government that at the time was torturing a female activist who just wanted to drive a car. This is a government that had murdered Jamal Khashoggi in a brutal fashion just a couple of years earlier. So, at the end of the day, when it comes down to brass tacks, the powers that be, even the free countries are led by people who are very, very happy to sacrifice all these pretty words about human rights when it comes down to profits, unfortunately.
So do you think capitalism, that's maybe one of the flaws of capitalism, is it turns a blind eye to injustices against human nature, against the human rights? Like it turns a blind eye to authoritarian governments?
Look, I think that at the end of the day, free trade is actually really good. And you can just look at France and Germany as an example of how a capitalist structure would develop. If you have two capitalist actors, they're very unlikely to fight each other. There's very unlikely to be violence, right? These are two countries which basically murdered some large percentage of each other's male population 3 times in 100 years in 3 different wars, right? And now today, war is unthinkable. And a lot of that is because of increased collaboration, increased trade. So when you have two capitalist actors, they act in a very productive way with each other. But as soon as you introduce an authoritarian actor, all bets are off. So I think what you have is a conflict between capitalist actors and authoritarian actors. And at the end of the day, people need to, yes, have more than just capitalist intentions. In the geopolitical level I'm talking about, they need to actually take a stand for principles. Otherwise, you have athletes and businesses and governments that are all too happy to do business with the Chinese Communist Party, for example, right now. I think that there is a little more than just kind of the pure profit. Yes.